Imagine being dropped into a room full of people, and every word they speak feels like it's bouncing off the walls. Confusing, unclear, and overwhelming. You're nodding, smiling, but deep inside, you're lost. This was exactly how Sarah felt the first time she walked into her new job in a completely English-speaking environment. But what if I told you, just months later, Sarah transformed herself from shy and confused to confidently giving presentations in English, surprising even herself. Before we dive into Sarah's incredible story and the practical tips that helped her master English, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. At Speak Well Academy, we're dedicated to helping you speak English fluently, and our upcoming videos are packed with tips and motivational stories that can change your life. Don't miss out on this journey with us. Sarah's story is one many of us can relate to. She moved to a new country to follow her dream of working in the fashion industry. But there was a problem. Her English wasn't nearly as good as she needed it to be. She could understand some phrases, but when it came to replying, she froze. Her heart would race, and words would jumble in her head. For weeks, she stayed silent during meetings, terrified that her colleagues would judge her for making mistakes. Sound familiar? But here's the thing. Sarah made a decision. She promised herself that no matter how hard it got, she would overcome this fear. She decided not to run away from English, but to embrace it, challenge it, and conquer it. Today, we're going to break down the exact methods Sarah used so you can apply them to your own journey. Whether you're just starting or stuck in the middle of your learning process, this video will show you how to break through the barriers holding you back from fluency. Step 1. Set a clear, achievable goal. The first breakthrough Sarah had in her English learning journey was understanding the importance of setting a clear, achievable goal. At first she thought, I need to learn English, but quickly realized that this goal was far too vague and overwhelming. How do you measure learning English? When is it considered complete? What does it mean to be fluent? These are all important questions that need clear answers. For Sarah, fluency wasn't about sounding like a native speaker or mastering every single aspect of the English language in just 6 months. Instead, she decided to focus on a specific, personal goal: to be able to hold basic conversations with her colleagues at work without freezing up. That meant she would be able to participate in discussions, ask questions, and respond confidently when someone spoke to her in English. This narrowed focus immediately made her goal feel more attainable. Having a specific goal like this does 2 things. Purpose. It gives you a reason for learning. Sarah wasn't learning English just because it was a requirement for her job. She was learning to feel more comfortable in social situations and to connect better with her coworkers. This sense of purpose kept her motivated, especially on days when progress felt slow. Measurability. A vague goal like learning English leaves you feeling like you're never good enough. But when Sarah set the goal to hold basic conversations at work, she had a measurable target to aim for. As her conversations improved, even just a little, she could clearly see her progress. Now, let's apply this to you. What's your specific English learning goal? Is it to pass a job interview in English? To travel confidently in an English-speaking country? Or maybe it's being able to chat with friends without feeling embarrassed. The more specific your goal, the better. Write it down, and be as clear as possible. Here's a tip. Avoid setting unrealistic goals like becoming fluent in 3 months. Instead, break your larger goal into smaller, achievable steps. For example, you might aim to introduce yourself fluently in English within 2 weeks. Once you've done that, move on to the next small step. Over time, these little victories will add up, and you'll be amazed at how far you've come. In Sarah's case, once she could confidently chat with her colleagues at work, she set her next goal: to give a presentation in English. Each goal built on the last, and each one helped her stay motivated throughout her learning journey. So remember, specific measurable goals are the first key to success. Step 2. Start speaking from day 1. Even if you feel unprepared. One of the most common traps that English learners fall into is waiting until they feel ready to speak. Sarah, like many others, believed that she needed to be perfect before she could start having conversations in English. She was afraid of making mistakes, mispronouncing words, or not understanding what others were saying. But here's the truth. You will never feel fully ready to speak. The key is to start speaking from day 1, even if you make mistakes. For months, Sarah hesitated to speak English, always thinking, "I'll practice more and speak when I'm better." But that day never seemed to come. Finally, she decided to push herself out of her comfort zone. She joined an online language exchange group where people from all over the world practiced English together. The first time she introduced herself, she was terrified. She stumbled over her words, mixed up grammar, and felt embarrassed. But to her surprise, nobody in the group cared about her mistakes. In fact, they were all in the same boat, learning English, making errors, and improving together. This group became a safe space where Sarah could practice without fear of judgment. Here's the lesson. Waiting until you feel fully prepared will only hold you back. The truth is, the only way to become fluent is to start speaking as soon as possible. It's okay to make mistakes. In fact, every mistake you make is a learning opportunity. The sooner you start speaking, the sooner you'll improve. Sarah made it a habit to practice speaking every day. She started small, ordering coffee in English, asking her colleagues simple questions, or chatting with her language exchange partner. Every conversation, no matter how short, boosted her confidence. Over time, these little speaking opportunities added up, and she began to feel more comfortable speaking in English, even in more challenging situations like work meetings. So, how can you start speaking more? One option is to join a language exchange group, just like Sarah did. There are many apps and websites where you can connect with people who are also learning English and want to practice with you. Another option is to practice speaking with yourself. Yes, it might feel strange at first, but even talking to yourself in English can help build your confidence. Remember, the goal is not to speak perfectly but to speak confidently. Every conversation, no matter how simple, is a step forward. Don't wait until you feel ready. Start today. Step 3. Daily micropractices. The power of consistency. One of the biggest challenges Sarah faced was finding time to practice English. With a demanding job and a busy schedule, it seemed impossible to set aside hours for study sessions. But then, Sarah discovered the concept of micropractices, small, manageable efforts that can be easily integrated into daily life. Instead of waiting for the perfect moment to sit down with a textbook for hours, Sarah started practicing English in short bursts throughout her day. During her morning commute, she listened to English podcasts. During her lunch break, she read short articles in English. And when she had a few minutes to spare in the evening, she would watch English language videos on YouTube. By fitting these micro-practices into her routine, she was able to practice English consistently, even with a busy schedule. Here's the key. Consistency is more important than quantity. You don't need to spend hours every day studying English to make progress. Even just 15 to 20 minutes of practice, done consistently, can lead to significant improvement over time. The key is to make English a part of your daily life, rather than something you only do occasionally. For Sarah, these small efforts added up quickly. After just a few weeks of daily micro-practices, she started to notice real improvements in her listening, speaking, and comprehension skills. The more she exposed herself to English, the more natural it became. She began to pick up new vocabulary, understand the rhythm of conversations, and even improve her pronunciation. All without spending hours in front of a textbook. So, how can you incorporate micro-practices into your routine? Here are a few ideas. Listen to English podcasts or audiobooks during your commute or while doing chores. Change your phone's language settings to English. Spend a few minutes reading English articles or watching English videos during breaks. Speak to yourself in English while you're getting ready in the morning. The goal is to expose yourself to English as much as possible, even if it's just for a few minutes at a time. Over time, these small, consistent efforts will add up, and you'll start to notice real progress in your English skills. Step 4. Surround yourself with English. Create an immersive environment. One of the most effective strategies Sarah used to accelerate her English learning was to create an immersive environment. Immersion is often regarded as one of the most powerful ways to learn a language. But for Sarah, who wasn't living in an English-speaking country, creating immersion seemed impossible at first. Then, she realized that she didn't need to move abroad to immerse herself in English. She could create that environment right at home. Sarah began by making small changes. She switched her phone's language settings to English. Every time she checked her messages, used apps, or navigated through her phone, she was exposed to English words and phrases. Next, she started watching her favorite TV shows in English, using subtitles in English instead of her native language. At first, this felt challenging. She struggled to keep up with the dialogue. But over time, her listening comprehension improved, and she began to pick up on common phrases, slang, and even cultural references that helped her sound more natural when speaking English. Another powerful change Sarah made was curating her social media feeds. Instead of following accounts in her native language, she started following English-speaking influencers, pages, and groups that aligned with her interests. Whether it was fitness, cooking, or personal development, she made sure that her daily scroll on Instagram or Facebook was filled with English content. This gave her constant exposure to the language in a way that felt fun and natural, rather than like studying. Here's an important point. Immersion doesn't have to be overwhelming. You don't need to move to an English-speaking country or isolate yourself from your native language completely. Instead, look for ways to integrate English into your daily life in a way that feels enjoyable. By surrounding yourself with English in various aspects of your life, whether it's through entertainment, social media, or even everyday tasks like using your phone, you create an environment where you're constantly exposed to the language. Sarah also joined online forums and groups where English was the primary language. Whether she was discussing hobbies, asking for advice, or participating in discussions, these communities helped her practice reading and writing in English in real-life contexts. The best part? She was practicing without even realizing it because she was engaged in topics she genuinely cared about. For you, this could mean starting small. Change your phone and computer settings to English. Watch English language movies or shows with English subtitles to train your ears to listen and comprehend. Follow English-speaking accounts on social media that match your interests, so you're naturally motivated to engage with the content. Join online communities or discussion groups where people communicate in English about topics you enjoy. By creating this immersive environment, Sarah turned her daily routine into a learning opportunity. She wasn't just studying English. She was living it. This constant exposure helped her brain process English more naturally, making speaking and understanding the language feel much less like a task and more like a part of her everyday life. Step 5. Focus on listening comprehension. Tackle fast speech. One of the most difficult challenges Sarah faced was listening comprehension, especially when people spoke quickly. At work, her colleagues often had rapid conversations, and Sarah found herself struggling to keep up. It wasn't just about knowing vocabulary or grammar. Understanding natural, fast-paced English was a whole new challenge. In the beginning, Sarah felt frustrated. No matter how hard she tried, it seemed like she was always missing important parts of the conversation. But instead of giving up, she decided to take a proactive approach. She started by listening to English podcasts and radio shows on her commute, but not just any podcasts. She chose content where the speakers talked fast and naturally. At first, this was overwhelming. She could barely catch half the words, and trying to keep up left her exhausted. But she didn't give up. Sarah realized that she needed to start slow, so she began using tools to slow down the playback speed. Apps like YouTube or Audible allow you to adjust the speed of the audio, so Sarah listened at a slower pace until her brain could catch up. She also made it a habit to replay sections she didn't understand. Repetition was key. If she couldn't catch a word or phrase, she would listen to that part again until it started making sense. Slowly but surely, her listening skills improved. Over time, Sarah was able to increase the speed of the podcasts and audiobooks she listened to. Her brain had adapted, and she could now follow along with faster speech without feeling overwhelmed. This not only helped her at work but also made it easier to enjoy English language movies and TV shows without subtitles. The lesson here is simple. Listening comprehension takes time and practice, especially when it comes to fast speech. Start with slower, simpler content if necessary, and gradually work your way up. Don't be discouraged if you don't catch every word right away. The goal is to focus on understanding the overall context, not every single word. As your brain gets used to the rhythm and flow of English, you'll find that you naturally start picking up more details. Here are a few tips to improve your listening comprehension.